Everyone. Welcome to the Black Podcast. I'm just excited about today's guest, and I say that all the time, but it just feels like it's just getting like richer and richer with the people that are coming on this show. So we do have a very special guest today. And before we get started, we want to talk about the Black Podcast, and we also want to introduce ourselves. My name is Dr. Sherelle Hobson. I'm one of the co-hosts for the Black Podcast, and I had the pleasure of helping coaches to develop programs that really give them success and give their athletes success. So I am a athletic director. I'm a student athlete resilience coach and athletic program enthusiast. And one thing that I really take pride in is creating these spaces for our young men, in particular Black men, and in high schools to be successful, whether they're transitioning to college or into life. And so I like to prepare and help coaches create those environments and those spaces so that our students can have that. I've been in education for 15 years, and it just seems like we have this cycle that continues to a cycle that just continues, right? And it's a lot of them is young Black men who are involved in athletics, but you don't hear anything else about them afterwards. It seems like they're just gone, they just vanish. And so we really want to create this space and stop that cycle from happening, because our young men, they need help, they need support, they need resources. And so people may say, okay, well, hey, opportunities are presented to everybody, but they're not presented the same. And so I really take pride in doing that. And I have a doctorate in sports administration and leadership, where my dissertation was on African American males and the effects of athletics on the educational plans. So this is something that is that I'm very passionate about, but it's also my life purpose. And so I've had the honor of sharing many platforms with my friend here, Mr. Street. We also have a business, HSBA, where he will elaborate more on that. But my partner, Brian Street.
Yep. So I'm I'm looking at this guest that we have today, and I go back to my days when I was a young buck and I was playing basketball on a regular basis. I think all the way back to my childhood when I was picking up the ball, getting on the court, my mom and dad like, get off the court. And I'm just out there wanting to live up my dreams and watching Michael Jordan, throughout the season. Like, that's going to be me one day. That's going to be me one day. And coming from a small town like I was from, there was always that push. Yes, go be the next Michael Jordan. Go be the next Deion Sanders. Go be the next whoever in that athletic space. And I saw that there wasn't a whole lot of, well, take this as an addition just in case. Make sure you focus in this area just in case. So that's one of the things that Dr. Hobson was just mentioning. Like, we really aim to focus to make sure that they have that life to where they are out there and they're doing great things, even if sports don't end up being the end of the road for them. So I'm thankful that I had good grades. I was pushing in the right directions. I made some mistakes. I got kicked out of college. Like, a lot of people don't know that. I was a college flunky. But now that I got multiple degrees and working on a PhD, a lot of people think that it was an easy road. And I feel like we have to bring together people, guests and such on a podcast, on a format like this, to kind of show that we don't all get to this, certain areas in life the exact same way. My journey was completely different than Sherelle's journey. My journey was completely different than our guest's journey, but ultimately we all have value, and it's something of greatness that we all have to give to the world. And telling our story helps that next generation realize that the same applies to them. You can go out there and live your best life. And I created a company back in 2018 that really focuses on rendering services across various different fields that really help people understand that it don't matter where you came from. Like, you could have had the most traumatic background. The generations before you could have been so down in the dumps. But if you choose to surround yourself with the right people, take the right actions, and put the right things in your mind today, you can start living your life with purpose and being that example for the next one. That's why I named my company Your Legacy Begins Now. So off of that note, I don't want to talk about myself too much more. I want to talk about this fella out here hooping across the big blue pond, doing great things over in the European Union, so to say. Without further ado, we have Mr. Josh Young. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on, people? It's going very well. I appreciate you for having me today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's a blessing to have you here, and thank you for accepting our invite. We know that you're super busy, so we appreciate you waking up. And because I know it's at 11 p.m. you said there, so we appreciate you making that accommodation and cutting in your beauty sleep, your rest. So we appreciate that, and we just look forward to hearing more about you. So, as I explained earlier, the Black Podcast is really about sharing those relevant stories. And so, you know, looking through your pictures and your videos, it's like, wow, his life has just been perfect and amazing. And so, we know that behind every uh, glory is a story. And so, we want you to share your story. So, if you can just start off with letting us know who you are, where you're from, and just the dynamics of your family, how you were raised.
Yeah, so I definitely have a story. The thing about being able to look at people through social media is that a lot of that stuff is curated, right? We get to decide what we put out in front of the public. And for the most part, no one wants to make themselves look bad. And so we put the best of what we have out for the world to see. And we kind of leave the imperfections in the background. But I'm a big believer that it's through imperfections that people influence, that people inspire, and being able to relate because we all deal with those things. My upbringing was a humble one. I'm from Lawton, Oklahoma. I was born in a small town, Shawnee, but I grew up in Lawton, which is a military base. So Lawton, Fort Sill, where I attended a private Christian school where both of my parents were the educators. I have four sisters, four beautiful sisters, one little brother. So my family is large. I come from an athletic family. We were all playing sports at the same time for many years, which baffles me to this day how my parents got us to all those practices at different places at different times for many years. And so we grew up there. We're very close to this day, but we were close when we were younger. And for me, sports has always been a big part of my journey. My dad was a basketball coach when I was a kid. So by default, after school, I would just walk over to the gym and have to wait on him after school before we would go home. And so I found myself just picking up the basketball naturally, dribbling around, shooting, and then later on started attending his basketball camps as a 5, 6, 7 year old, and just kind of fell in love with the game, and I knew it was something that I wanted to pursue in my life. But I was big on all sports. I had dabbled in football. I loved baseball. I think I would have tried to play baseball had I not played basketball. I ran track, and that was more just for staying in shape, and I did that until I was 18 years old. And so it was a big part of my life. My parents and the way that they raised us was traditional. My dad was a disciplinarian. He was the person that just pushed me in life. And my mother was the other side. She was the nurturing, very relational, caring side of the dynamic of my parents. And so I had a good balance. My dad would push me, and my mom would come in and explain things to me. And so it was good. I think in the time that I was ended up playing for him in my high school years, it wasn't. I wouldn't say that it was peaches and cream. And I tell him this to this day because you got to see him all day. He's my teacher. He's my dad. He's my coach. And so there's no getting away from that dynamic. But the way that they raised us were to be upstanding young men and young women, to love our neighbors like we love ourselves, to always be humble in everything that we do, um, and to live a life that would always bring glory to God and bring glory to the name of our family. And so that was the beginning of my life. That was the tone that was set for me and my family as young men and young women, and it has set the tone for me up until this day.
Man.
Wow.
Whoa, whoa.
You have a double ear. Okay, can you hear me?
Am I the only one with it cracking up?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a little crackly, maybe.
Okay. So let's like continue to talk about that the conversations that you had like with your family, like when you started to really start taking sports serious. Was it something that you felt like because what I found, especially when I did my studying and through my coaching, um, when I was in high school, I would see I have my friends, they were running track, playing football, and so that's, I was doing track because I loved it, and then when I realized that I was good at it, and then I could go to school for free, it was like, oh, okay. Um, but I know that a lot of my teammates, in particular our black men, they started being involved in athletics because they had to. Like it was their only way out. It was financial. It was, they loved the sport, but it was always something attached to it that motivated them. And then as I went to college, they had the same story. And I was like, okay, now they're in college doing, sports. It's like, I got to make it to the next level. I got to, the pressure of providing for my family, so that pressure never ended. Um, when you decided and you started to join sports and your passion or your motivation behind it, what was it? What was that from? Was it from like you just loving the sport, or was it more of like this is what we needed to do? Like, what was your story when it comes to that?
Yeah, I started being involved in sports just because from an early age I felt myself being athletic. I was an outdoors type of kid. Me and my sisters were always playing, so had a lot of energy. And so anytime that I could be doing something that was sporty, I just wanted to do it. It wasn't necessarily that I had built a love around it or that I thought that I was so great at it. I just knew that when I would run, I was fast. And when I jumped high. And when I shot, I could shoot well. And so I enjoyed doing those things. And so it started with running track at 5 years old. And then from there, turning into playing baseball when I was in second grade. And then by the time I got to fourth grade, which is ironic because basketball was the first sport that I had picked up, but I didn't start competing competitively, I guess you could say, till I was 9, which sounds like that's not late, but you can talk kids now. I would go to my nephew's game. He was 3 years old. He's playing soccer and basketball and all these games, and so it was just fun for me. Really, that's all it was. As a kid, I just enjoyed being on the court. I really enjoyed running track. I enjoyed being on the baseball field, and my friends were there. So anytime that I could spend more time with my friends, and do something that was outside, that was competitive. I had this competitive nature from the time that I was young. I was down for it, and so it was just something that I loved to do. It wasn't until later that I really passion started to be produced from what I was doing.
So I know you mentioned your dad was a basketball coach, but was he involved? Like, did he play professionally, or like, what was his journey with basketball besides coaching?
So my dad played college ball. Initially, he had played at Oklahoma State as a walk-on, and then he transferred to a small college in Kansas, and then he played a couple of years there, and then from there he met my mom, and then completely shifted gears from just being that athlete and the athlete journey into becoming a husband and a father. And so his journey was a little more short-lived than mine has been, but he was definitely the inspiration when I was a young kid of starting this journey.
So the last thing, like, do you feel with the journey was a little bit different? Did you ever feel that pressure, like him living vicariously through you, or did he let you allow you to have like your own journey? Because sometimes like your parents didn't take it to a certain place, it's like you gotta make it, boy. Like you gotta, or was it kind of just letting you live, like have that journey? You know what I'm saying? Like have your own little walk and experience when it comes to basketball. Um, And like, how was y'all conversation when it came to like maybe him seeing something in you that maybe you can go further than he did? Like, how was that conversation or that relationship?
It's interesting because as much as my father pushed me in the sport, and I'm talking a high level of accountability, the way that he spoke to me after the games about what I didn't do correctly and what I could have done better. Um, he never forced the sport on me. He never told me you need to make it professionally. He never even told me you need to make it to college with this. He just saw that I had something in me that he was going to do everything in his power to pull out. And that was tough for me because I'm a kid. I don't see things the way sees them. I think a lot of times with our parents, the way that they communicated was different in the previous generation. It was just doing things. It wasn't a lot of explanation. And explanation for me and my sisters and my siblings when we were kids was because I said so. It wasn't much of, there was like a collaboration. This is the whys. It wasn't until much later in my life when I was having a heart to heart with my father that he told me why he was the way he was. And so he never forced the sport on me. He never forced the game on me. I had something that was in me that I just wanted it so bad. And so that's what woke me up in the mornings and made me go run my neighborhood at 5 and then get up and go to the school and shoot before school. And then when I come home, you would find me on my basketball goal every single day. And I tell kids all the time, if you were to interview anyone in that neighborhood that lived on that street I was on, they would tell you if you came outside at these hours any day, you would see that kid on that goal every single day. And it was just something that I did. It was no one told me. I never came home. My dad was like, "Yo, go outside and shoot." I just did it. And when he had the opportunity to be leading the charge as my coach, um, he did everything that he could to make sure that what he saw in me was going to be manifested in my life, and that was to be able to play at higher levels.
All right, mic check, mic check. Am I coming across okay? Okay, good. Yeah, so just looking at your upcoming in multiple sports. I was the same way. I started a lot later. I didn't play organized sports of any sort until I was in middle school. But I saw that being that pretty much year-round athlete, it adds a different dynamic to your life in relation to your peers than your peers who may only participate in one sport or they don't do sports at all. What would you say, like your adolescence, what was that like as far as your relationships with friends, the types of bonds you were able to build compared to some of the things you may have seen some of your other friends being able to get into, things they were able to do when you were steady going to practice, so on and so forth? What was that dynamic like? And how would you kind of speak towards that if you were speaking to someone that's currently going through multiple sports?
Yeah, well, I saw and I see now, hindsight is 2020, but a lot of value in being a multi-sport athlete. For me, there were certain disciplines that I learned in track that I didn't get from basketball or from football that I didn't get from baseball. And also there were certain movements, right? Functionality, the
Yeah.
way that I would the way that you move as a defender in soccer actually can translate to the way that you're able to move in defense in basketball. And so there are a lot of things that you can see and translate across the board. I think for me, in the way that I was able to build relationships, I went to a really small school. I mean, I graduated with 16 kids in my class.
That's really small.
16 kids and we can talk about 16 kids in my class. And so the downside of that.
Well, did we lose you? Let's see. We're not getting audio. Let's see. Give me just a sec. All right, let's try again. Mic check, mic check. Sherelle, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Oh, he fell off. All right, so we're gonna hang tight. Mr. Josh Young should be back with us any second now. Technical difficulties today, having some voice distortion and all type of stuff. So let's see here.
It's the
Right,
devil. The devil is a lie. He's a hater. He don't want you to share your story. You don't want nobody to get it. We don't know. We're going to keep pressing the reset button. We're going to reset until you come back.
We are good.
So you were talking about how, transitions from, what you learned in the different sports and a mentality and how it changes work. So yeah, go ahead.
Right. And I was going to say, in the relationship piece is the question that you asked me. And I saw a lot of value in that. In my small, tiny school circle of friends, my sphere of influence, I was able to build really, really strong relationships with those people because there were only a few of us. And so, since there were only a few of us, we all decided that we were going to do everything together. So, we played all the sports together. And I'm not talking about for like high school. We played all sports together since we were kids. From the time I was in fourth grade until we graduated, we built up a chemistry of playing across the board all these sports that I talked about. I think, but the dichotomy that came in was that there were three other schools in my city, and they were larger schools, so 6A schools, 5A schools. And I also built relationships with those individuals because of sports. Sports will do that. It brings people together. It's one of the reasons that I love it. But one of the things that I was able to avoid is Lawton, Oklahoma, in the time that I was coming up, was third in the nation in gang violence per capita. So there was a lot of it. A lot of the people that I knew, hung around, that played in sports, decided that that was also going to be a part of their life. And it's that, that desire for community, that desire for a role model, a mentor, and it just manifests itself in a different way. But it was because I was so committed to sports that I never got involved in it. And when I tell you, people ask me often to get involved, it was always an opportunity for me. But I was very grateful that one, my parents were who they were, and that they had raised me with the level head that I was raised with, and two, that I had sports as an outlet to really just dive into. And so I was able to avoid a lot of nonsense growing up because of that, because it was something that I knew I wanted to do. And so I was willing to take the risk of always being in the gym for my future versus being with my friends doing things on the weekend that I knew wasn't something that I should be a part of. So sports in that sense has been a saving grace for me as well. I always thought that I was strong enough to overlook those things, to avoid them, but you never know. And so I'm just glad that I never had to really come to head with the consequences of my own decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we had so many people share that, that same similar type of story. And, I grew up with my mother and father as well. My parents were married since they were 18 years old. So I always knew if I did this or I did that, that's going to kill me. My parents are going to kill me, like literally. So I wasn't involved in a lot of stuff that, girls my age were doing. I was so focused on track that it was like I didn't have time to entertain boys. I didn't have time to go out and get into anything crazy because, my parents was like, hey, if you're not passing, you're not playing, you're not running. And it was like, started to coach, my athletes, the girls, they were 18, 19 at the time, and so they would be like, or 17, and they'd be like, Coach, why you don't have no kids? Why you don't have no? And it was like, that wasn't my focus. I was always focused on athletics. When I got to high school, I was like, now I'm trying to get to college. When I got to college, even though my parents would have found a way to get me there, it wasn't like I had to do it because for money reasons, but it was just always having that focus on something. And I knew that I wanted to be the best at what I did. So I always had something to focus on. When we talk about, a lot of those young men who don't have that strength or that willpower to say no when their friends are going to go out and do certain things. And a lot of our kids don't have that just because maybe don't have the support at home, where they know that their parents are going to be disappointed in them. A lot of them have a story where they look to the streets for that man, in their life, that man figure, that someone that's going to give them advice and suggestion or even protection. In certain places they felt like I needed someone to protect me. So I had to be involved in those things. And you see a lot of stories, or hear a lot of stories of young men getting caught up like that. I want you to share two things with me. The first thing, when it came to the friends that you did grow up with, since y'all was so close, when some decided to go a different direction, how did that affect your relationship with them, or your conversation with them? Because I know sometimes when you come back, you might be like, oh, Josh, he's better than us, you think he's better than us, or whatever it is. Like, do you feel like, how was that relationship when you decided, I'm going to stay focused, and they decided to do something else? And then I also want to know, being very competitive, how we are, how have you been able to transition that into your life? Like, I know for me, I'm just always thinking about winning. And when I'm talking to someone who's not an athlete, they're like, what are you trying to win? It's like life. I just want to win. I want to live an abundant life. I'm a freaking winner. And they're like, relax. So when you're talking to someone who's not into that kind of stuff, they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. So can you answer those questions first? The relationship with the people that you grew up with, when it was time for y'all to decide on what y'all were going to do, and then also how you transitioned your mentality into what you're doing right now as far as your life.
Yeah. So the relationship aspect for me was I had a lot of friends from my neighborhood. And it was in the time where we would get together, be outside, playing games, playing basketball, playing football, throwing frisbee, doing whatever, and not necessarily just being inside playing video games. And it was a big thing. I mean, we would play 5-on-5 games. We'd drag one rim down to the next cul-de-sac so we could play across the whole street and lower the rims to 8 so people could get dunked on because we weren't athletic enough to dunk 10 feet. And so we built a lot of strong relationships. Some of my best friends in the time were my neighborhood friends. And it was some of my neighborhood friends that ultimately ended up going down the wrong path. And I never at the time was going to shun my friends because of what they decided to do, because I could express that I wasn't going to be involved in that. And I could express to them that I don't think you should be involved in it either. But at the end of the day, everyone makes their decisions and has to live with that. And so as I was beginning to mature as a young man in my junior, senior year of high school, um, I started to slowly separate myself from those relationships. And that was one of the ways that I knew it had to be done. A few years ago, I came back from overseas and I had to get one of my tires fixed. And one of my guys from high school, he has a good mechanic, so I just took my car over to his house. I wanted him to look at the car while I was he was working on some other stuff. And so we were sitting in the living room and we got to talking about our neighborhood days because he grew up in my neighborhood. So we started talking about all the kids and like what happened to all these kids. And he brought up one of my, who was probably my best friend in the neighborhood at the time. And I'm like, man, I haven't talked to him in forever. I'm like, well, where's he at? He's like, I know, I saw him on Facebook. So I get on, I'm so excited. Like I get on Facebook immediately. I find his profile. I send him a message. Uh, and then I get a message back. It's like, hey, this isn't him, but this is his girlfriend. And I'm like, oh, okay. Hey, nice to meet you. You know, where's he at? And she's like, he's in jail. And and so he was in a jail that was 3.5, 4 hours away from me, middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. And I had reached out to him and I told him, hey, I'll be there this weekend. I'm gonna come see you. So I drove up and I walk into this like cafeteria after doing all the sign in. I don't know if you ever visited somebody in jail, but it's an extensive process to do that, right? And so I feel like it's yeah, right. And so I go in and I see him and I'm just ecstatic to see him. He looks exactly the same, just like 15, 10 years older, you know? And and so we sit down, we start talking. We obviously were talking about how, you know, it was when we were kids and all the just nonsense we used to do because his parents were never home and we were just always doing stupid things. Um, but the thing about this kid was that if you needed someone to have your back, he was that person. And I mean, like, he would fight anybody for you to stick up for it. Great intent. Just the way that it came out was misplaced, you know. And I remember the conversation that we had. I was telling him, you know, this has to be over for you. You've been doing this since we were 14, 15 years old, and now you have a girlfriend, you have 2 kids with her, you're a father, and they're going to want their dad to be in their life. And the way that we were able to communicate, the way that he received that message was unbelievable. We hadn't talked in so long or spoken in so long, um, but it just shows you that when you build relationship with people, that you can speak into their life. They will let you speak into their life. My mom always says that rules without relationship will breed rebellion. If you try to put rules on someone you don't have a relationship with, you can be sure that they will rebel against you. And so the relationship piece was one of the things that I got from my upbringing and how important that was. It's been a staple of my life. And and so being able to do that with my childhood friends, and even after having separated with them for so long, and then to reconnect all these years later because of the relationship that we had during that time, I was really able to speak into his life and empower him. And so he's working on getting his CDL, turning his life around, and trying to be better for his family now. So really cool. And your second question, you have to remind me because I went on a tangent.
I don't know. I was trying to stop myself from crying. I'm like, don't freaking cry. I'm freaking crying. But like, I appreciate you sharing that story because those things are, um, you never know whose life, you're changing and just by living just your life. You know what I'm saying? Someone saying, man, Josh, you're right. And it took the obedience. You never know what journey God takes you on and who He's trying to put you in front of. You might have been that person that did speak to Him, at that moment. Because maybe nobody else can relate to it. It's not like someone knowing you, like God know you, He, even me not knowing you personally, I can feel that you were speaking to Him from love. You wasn't being judgmental. You were just saying, you're my boy. I love you. Like, we grew up together. Like, I see more in you. I've seen you from the time you were small to where you're at now. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that story. But my second question was about, having that winning mentality, how you've been able to, we talked about the skills that you've learned from sports and being able to transition into your life. But when it comes to like that winning mentality, it's like sometimes I found even with myself personally, it's like I don't have a cap, right? So when my brother passed away, I started to speak to a counselor in Reading County. She was just like, what are you trying to win at? Like, what is considered winning to you? And I was just like, winning? I don't know. Like, it just needs to be, my life needs to be, I'm very competitive. I want to continue to grow. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm always looking to progress. And, I reached getting the highest degree I could possibly reach. And she's like, okay, at what point are you content or, happy? Like, can you honestly say that you're happy? Is your happiness attached to your accomplishments? And for a long time, that was my life. My accomplishments have made me happy. But every time I had, attained those goals and reached them, it was like, okay, now what can I add to my plate? So my question to you is, how have you been able to balance, like, being very competitive in the sports? Because you're very soft spoken, like you're very humble. When I saw you play, like I seen videos, I'm like, this ain't the same dude, right? Like it's a whole other, like, like if I didn't know you played rap, I'm like, he seems too nice, It seems like, but when you're playing, it's like you turn this whole, it's like a whole other job, like a whole other person. So how have you been able to transition like that winning mentality or just that competitiveness from being an athlete to outside of the court when it's time for you to just live your, whatever you do in your regular life?
And Josh, before you answer, Sherelle, check the private chat. I think you need to tweak your microphone because it's coming across a little distorted. So go ahead and answer that, Josh.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. Um, when I play, I play with the spirit of gratitude, and I know that might sound a little bit different, but to me, it's one thing if you, for example, give me a shirt for my birthday, and I'm like, Brian, appreciate the shirt, man, awesome. And then we hang out every day for a straight year, and you never see me put that shirt on. You're gonna be like, does he really like the shirt? You know? So I feel like the best form of gratitude is to maximize, is to utilize. It's use, it's action. So when I step on the court, if I want to say thank you, God, for this opportunity, that to me is maximization. That is giving everything that I have every single time I have the ability to play. And that's why I seem different. It's not that I don't live my life with gratitude, but it's just something when you're locked in and you get in the zone and you're really going for something and you've got the team behind you and you're pushing for a goal. It brings something out of you, and it brings something out of me, and it has since I was a kid. I've always, people are like, you're a little killer. And then as soon as I step off the court, you're the nicest person I've ever met in my life. And I think it's a beautiful way to be, because it's not me being disingenuous. It's me being grateful. And now that I've been 11 seasons into this game, that level of gratefulness is off the charts. I am the first thing that I do every single day when I wake up is I say, thank you, Lord, for waking me up today. Every single day. Because time and chance is happening to us all. It's what we do with time and what we do with opportunity that's going to dictate and determine the level of our life. And so I've determined in my life, just recently actually, that I'm going to take advantage of every moment, because time is finite. It's the commodity we never get back. And I know we make plans for tomorrow, and we talk about our 5-year plan, our 10-year plan, and those things we should talk about those. We should write those down. We should have vision in all of those aspects. But we're doing a disservice if we don't be present, if we don't realize that what I really have is right now. And so giving everything to this moment is the most important thing that I can do. And that's my approach when I step on the court, is that I don't know how long this is going to last. I had a career ending injury before, and I thought that it was over for me. it was at that moment that I was like, hey, I got to learn how to do something else because basketball could be gone tomorrow. And I think a lot of young athletes never even think about that. I think that we do a disservice to our athletes by only praising their talent and never pubbing their gift and letting them know, hey, you have something that is inside of you that is more valuable, even more valuable than your talent. It's going to sustain you once this talent runs out, which it will. That's 100% fact that you won't play basketball, football, soccer, softball for your whole life. But the seed of purpose and the seed of gifting, the seed of greatness that's inside of you, let's put that in the right environment right now so that that can begin to grow. And as you maximize your talent, you maximize your gift. And when those two things come into equilibrium, then we're talking about the life of abundance. And we're talking about living a life that a lot of people never come to see because I think we leave out that important aspect of not just serving the world, because service is purpose. But once you figure out how to serve the world in your gift, that's a whole nother level of service. And that's the element that we need to bring to young people, to young athletes. And I'm not even sure how I got there, but I feel very adamant about
I'm,
that.
I'm gonna call timeout, and I'm gonna say anybody listening to this on replay, please go back, rewind like 5 minutes, and listen again, and then rewind and listen again, because what this gentleman just dropped was genius. And I know I make reference to this podcast on many of our episodes, but I am athlete with Brandon Marshall.
Right.
All those guys, they've been having lots of conversations around that topic. Like, what are we telling, what are we showing those young guys that we wish we would have known then? The mistakes that they're making right now, giving them, that other route that we see now, that our career could have been elongated, our career could have been better, more fruitful, and our life after could have been even better than what it is had we known what we do now, had we known it then. And I mean, you're speaking it, man. You're speaking it. And I look back to whenever I was in high school, and that was the peak of my athletic career. And I was that, I refer to it as the nerdy jock, whereas the teachers loved me because I was a great student, was respectful, all those good things. Plus, I was a star athlete. So, my homeboys loved me. So it was odd for my boys to see my interactions with my teachers in the classroom, and then when the teachers would see me on the football field, I don't know who that was, but that wasn't Brian. That wasn't Brian. So being able to live in that duality, I feel is so important. And when we can spill that down to that next generation and make them realize what's going on the football field, enjoy it to the max right now. Like, live it. You know how they say, leave it all on the field, leave it all on the court. Do that every single time because you never know when that's going to be the last time you were on that court. And it's just, I'm glad, I'm so glad to hear you speaking that. You're a couple years younger than me, and it was about during when I was your age. What, about 32 now or so?
32.
Yeah. So when I was about your age, when I was really coming into true belief in what my life could be and drawing real in-depth reflections off of what got me to where I am. And I think that's a principal time to be able to pour back into that next generation. And it's just speaking on that, we go to your Instagram account and you have verbiage in your bio around being an inspiration. So what are some of the things that you do in that space as far as pouring back into, as far as inspiring the next generation, those around you, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I well, the first thing I do is I seek to serve those that are in direct contact with me. So my direct community, being here is here in Germany, that is pretty much my team, my coaches, the people in the organization. I've been the captain of this team for 3 or 4 years, maybe. It's something that I don't take lightly, and leadership to me, again, is servanthood. I think that leadership there's a fine line between good leaders and great leaders. And the line for me is this, that a good leader will see something in you that you can't see in yourself. But I think it's the great leader that gets you to believe what they see in you. And that's the difference. I aim to be a great leader. I know that it's something that God's put inside of me, that ability to discern in other people what is in you. And so I use that. I use it on the basketball court. I use it outside of the basketball court. I use it in Germany. I use it in America. And that, you know why? Because the gift is never going away. The Bible says that God gives the gift without repentance. So no matter what I decide to do with it, it's always going to be there. It's up to me if I decide to use it for positive or for negative, for impact or for something that is not going to bring glory. But that's the way that I approach doing that, is first serving the people who are directly around me. And then on top of that, I try to, any chance that I'm able to speak, to bring awareness to these facts that we're talking about, and how important it is to serve from our gift, how important it is to also maximize the talent and the ability that we've been given, and how important that is for our lives. Because I think in athletics, it's so important, because we celebrate our athletes to no end. Just we celebrate. And the problem that comes in that is that it ultimately teaches the athlete to identify with the thing that they're celebrated for. And so they get so wrapped up in the emotionalism of being celebrated as a basketball player, as a track star. So when that thing ends, now people have an identity crisis. They have no idea, who am I? Because my whole life I've been Josh, the basketball player. People know me for that. And it's a real humbling thing, I'm sure, to be the most celebrated athlete one day, and then the next day, no one in the world cares about you because you are not entertainment anymore. Because you don't play basketball, or you don't play football, or you don't run track or play volleyball. So that's why it's so important to understand, what is actually my intrinsic value? What is my purpose? What is the thing that makes me unique? What is the thing that's going to sustain me through life? What's the thing that's going to allow me to serve this world, and do it in a way that brings glory and honor to the kingdom? And so I think all of those things are important, and they're becoming increasingly more important. The reason I use that verbiage in my Instagram and my Twitter, Facebook, is because it's my life. It's my life statement. It's my life mission. I am really here to empower, inspire, and impact the masses. That is what everything comes down to for me. And that's what life is about. We weren't created for ourselves. Our purpose is tied up in being able to serve others and help others achieve the things that God has created them to do. And that is going to take on a much bigger task and responsibility for me here in a few weeks. But I'm very excited for that, and for the journey. It's been amazing.
Wow. It's just, it's when I was coaching, I don't coach too much anymore. But I used to always put things on the board about life, and my athletes would be like, oh my God, my coach is like a pastor. But, she's always talking about life. She's always talking about God. But I was just so like, hey, I'm going to speak the truth. This is the truth. And I've always enjoyed being that leader, like you said. It was one thing that I was good at, but there were things that I was great at. And it never felt stressful because it was who I am. It was part of who, I didn't realize that that was my purpose in life. I thought it was more just, when I started to realize that, hey, my purpose in life is to serve. And I enjoy it. have joy from that. I have happiness from that. Knowing that there's certain things I'm going to encounter in my life that I can pay forward, that I can show. And that's why I go to work, saying, you got your crying. I can hear like the background noise. And so it's like, I always told like my administrator and stuff like that, and they said, why you have a conversation about this? Why aren't you coaching about track? And I was just like, I'm coaching life. And if I can prepare them for life, then I can prepare them for track. And so it always transferred, right? So people was like, we hear that she's never really practicing because she's always talking about life during study hall. But yet they're always showing up, at the championship meet, dominating. They always showing up at the state meet. They're always showing up. Why is 90% of her girls get scholarships? So that's why I always created a space. Like I told my kids, it's about a relationship with me. I knew who my girls were hanging out with. I knew what they were doing. They didn't make practice. They knew that they were more scared of answering to me than they were their own parents. And so I always felt obligated and a responsibility to those young girls. My life was about, I need to make sure that
All right, y'all bear with us. I think Sherelle is trying to tweak her microphone. But that's something that she always shared with us, man. When you pour into people, into their lives, they see so much more potential in anything that they do. And that's one of the things that she would always pour into her athletes. And it was difficult for her colleagues to understand. And just looking at how you lead your life, I'm sure there's people that gravitate towards you, not simply because you're a star athlete, but because of your demeanor, because of your outlook on life, how you speak to and conduct yourself around other individuals. It makes people, it magnetizes who you are, and it makes people want to be like you. And just being in your vicinity is going to empower them by default. I'm just sitting here listening to you, and I always, when you're a true athlete, you always like when you come in contact with another athlete that played the same sport, you're like, I wonder if I could take him. I wonder if I could take him. But so I'm sitting here, just looking at myself, thinking about us playing a game of, just a one-on-one or something, and just thinking about that, but then listening to you as that man outside of athletics, and that really grabbing a hold of me. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I wish I could go and hang with this guy just to be around that energy, because we don't see enough of that, especially from professional athletes. So, I just want to commend you for that, man. And one thing that you see is typically one of two things happen to professional athletes after their athletic career is over. Either they slowly fade off into obscurity where nobody really knows about them, or they aim to make a bigger impact. Their athletic career was just the pedestal, the stepping stone to get them to where they're going to be doing so many more bigger and better things. And that's where I see you, man. That's what I see you doing. And off of that note, kind of give us a visualization of what you foresee in those post career days. Talk to us a little bit on that.
All right. Before I say that, I have to, your story, or when you were talking about you saw us playing one-on-one, it reminded me of a story, because I'm 6'1", like 180, like not skinny, but not super big. And I remember I would come home in the summertime and I'd go back to church, and there'd be like new people at the church. And I remember I came back one time and there was this guy there. He's a little shorter, like maybe like 5'9", 5'10". And after church, someone introduced me to him, and they're like, "Yeah, he plays professional ball." And he looked at me like, "You?" And I remember saying to him, "Don't be fooled. I said, don't be fooled. I'll trash you." That's what I said to him. But post basketball is I've been thinking about, not just thinking about, I have been executing. One of my words for this year has been execution. And it's funny how God can get a hold of you in silence, right? Um, in the midst of storms, in the midst of a pandemic.
Mm.
And what that pandemic did for me is it gave me a lot of time to just be sitting here in this apartment thinking, because you can't go outside. Germany's on lockdown, so nothing is open. You can go to the grocery store, you can go to the hospital, and you don't want to go to the hospital, so you can pretty much only go to the grocery store. And then it's just basketball. But one of the benefits of playing here, depending on how you look at it, is that we just have a lot of time throughout the day. Even when we practice twice a day, we practice at 10 in the morning, we practice 5:30 at night. So the in between time is just it's just there, you know. And it was it was in December, the end of last year. I was sitting in this apartment, and I wish Sherelle was here because she was talking about this at the beginning, about how people see you from a certain perspective, vantage point. And they think, oh, you got this, this, and this. Um, but reality was that I was sitting here in this apartment, very, very unfulfilled, and feeling the weight of living so far beneath my potential. And it was when I came to grips with that reality that that's actually where my life is at. The way that I feel in my spirit has not been manifested in my life. And so I had to take a really deep self assessment, um, self reflection, and say, listen, because I believe that God extends things to us when we're ready for them.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that we get a car after we get our license, because we prove we can drive. Nobody gives their kid a car when they're 5 because they know they can't handle it. And we expect God oftentimes to give us things that we honestly can't handle. You want $1 million, but you have no idea what you'd do if you had $1 million. And Dr. Miles Monroe used to always say that the things that you mismanage in life, be sure that you will lose them. And the things that you manage properly, you will attract those things in your life. And so I just started to look at my resources, like how am I handling the things that God has given me, from starting with my time, right? Starting with my money, my finances, my relationships, all the things that I have in my possession. What does it look like? How am I treating the car that the club gives me? If I talk about, you want to have a really nice car, but the car that you have right now, you don't wash it. It's dirty. You have all kind of stuff in it. And I'm just talking about for me. And so I made this big self-assessment, and out of that came a hunger, like a real strong hunger to win in life. I'm like, I've been winning on the court for my whole entire life. It's time to translate that into winning in life. And so I will, in the next 2.5 weeks, it will be the pre-launch to my first business. I've been
Nice.
working on it for months, and it is what will be, whenever basketball ends, which I hope is not going to be anytime soon. It will be there. It's the competition of one, and that has been birthed out of my experiences as an athlete and my experiences as a black man. And I've stood across from tens of thousands of opponents playing sports. I've dealt with a lot of adversity. I've dealt with a lot of injury. There have been a lot of things that have come against me in life. But what I ultimately realized is that none of those things actually matter. The only thing that matters is, we have guessed, hey.
Yeah, I'm the guest. I'm like, okay, the devil. You see what he does when you start talking. You're like, okay, let me cut that off. We went completely dead. I was like, oh, okay, wow.
Hey,
But
your
I
computer
can
was
hear
dead, but
everything I was talking about.
your sound came to life though. So look, it worked out. Um,
Yes, but you definitely. I heard everything you were saying still.
oh, okay, yeah. So I so I just started to realize that the one consistent thing in all the adversity that any of us face, right? All the obstacles, the hurdles, all those things change. Your opponent in sports, they always change, but you were always there. You are the constant. And so I've come to this realization that it's not about these external factors. It's about creating a culture, a discipline, a work ethic, a confidence in yourself that is ready to sustain the highs and the lows of life. That if you can win the competition within, that's the competition that matters. That's the one that helps us elevate our life and takes us to new levels. And that's the competition of one. So I'm really excited to launch that. I have been just kind of keeping it on the back burner for a few months now, but it consumes a lot of my time and my thoughts, and it's going to impact a lot of lives. It's going to impact a lot of lives. It's got a lot of the elements that we talked about today, and being able, the mentorship, the leadership, the coaching aspect. People always told me, you'd be a great coach. And I always was like, I don't want to coach though. But actually, maybe what they saw was correct. It just wasn't in the right vein. So I'm excited about that. But that's what life is going to look like for me after basketball. It is going to be empowering, inspiring, and impacting lives on a bigger scale than I ever did as a basketball player.
Man, I love it. I love it. I want to know. You say 2 weeks. I want to know, like, what can we do to support to really push it out there?
Oh, that's great. So I'm gonna have a like a pre-launch party on one of these apps, one of these audio apps. Um, but then the website will go live. I will be having my Facebook community. So a real important part of this is that it's one thing to compete, right? Within, it's one thing to compete within. It's another thing to compete within with a community of people who are competing within.
Mm.
So it's the competition of one is the brand, but the community of one is where the power is going to come. Because I see it. This is how a rising tide raises all ships. And it's not just about, I don't want to motivate people because I can motivate you today and tomorrow you wouldn't move. It's happened to me many times where I went to a speech. I'm like, oh, that was awesome. Next day I woke up at 12. Didn't change any habit. I was the same person. It's not about that. This is about inspiring people and empowering them, giving them tools, giving them resources. And I realized that there are a lot of people who lack the desire to win in life. They lack the hunger. They lack the hunger. And so what's important is the Bible says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when desire comes, it's what? The tree of life. We were commanded to be fruitful. You know where fruit comes from? It comes from trees. Fruit comes from trees. And so if you want to be fruitful in life, you have to have a sustainable desire. And a lot of people don't have that desire because they don't have the foundation of what desire comes from, and that's hope. A lot of people lack hope. And so what we're going to do through this is we're going to go and give people their hope back and let them know that you can do this. It's time to take control of your life. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we are responsible for our life. The things that happen to us, the things that the adversity that comes into our life, we don't get to decide those things a lot of time. The only thing that we get to decide is how we respond to what life gives us. That's all we have. And that's the power that every human possesses, and no one can take it away. They could take your family, they could take your house, they could strip you of your name, they could take your job title, they could take all your money, but no one can ever take your ability to make decisions, to choose, to respond. And as long as they can't take that, then you always got some power to be working with. And so that's the base that we're going to start with, to start to empower people and let them know that you think you have nothing, but you have the ability to respond. And that's a great foundation to begin to build your life in a way that'll lead you to abundance. And so I'm really excited about it. But to answer your question, I will send you all those materials. We'll go and have www.competition1.com. We're on the back end right now working on that website. It'll go live. April 26th is my birthday, so everything is going to go live on that day. We will have, there's books, there's journals, there's planners. There's a lot that we're going to be bringing to the world to help people, to give them a blueprint, but also to give them resources like, hey, we're going to take this a step at a time and help you to win in life.
I hear partnerships. I hear collaborations.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. It's so rewarding, when you can see, you know, when you talked about your gift and you talk about, serving, and when you finally see it and you see people come back and just say thank you, you a lot of us, a lot of people are, they're not necessarily afraid of having hope or desire. It's fear. Nobody wants to fail. um and that used to always be a question to me when people say, well, like, name a time that you failed. And I was like, I never looked at some of the opportunities in my life as failure. I always looked at it like, man, something closed, it was another opportunity for me to do something else. And then it's amazing what how God moves in your life. I always had a desire just to be a coach. I wanted just to coach athletes and be an Olympic coach and just coach. And when I moved here to Houston, he changed my entire life. My whole life changed. And I started to speak and go to Thailand and speak hope and love and to people and help them to discover their desires and their purpose. And it was just like, wow, God, you just changed my whole life. Something that I thought was supposed to be just, when you think like, oh, God, this is what I'm supposed to be, this is what I'm good at. But then there's also things that you're great at. Like you said, there's good, there's great. And I'm great at inspiring. I'm great at living my truth and people being able to discover their potential through me living my life, you know. And so that's just amazing, to see that you can have this journey and continue to keep other people first. We always talk about the youth, but there are people who are our age. I'll be 40 next year. But there are women and men that I come across at my age too that are still trying to find themselves. And it's okay. We don't have, that's the thing about life. I tell people all the time, and I told an athlete this not long ago, the great thing about life and God is that his mercy and his grace, and the fact that you can set the reset button anytime that you want. You can say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna try something else. And it's just amazing that life presents that self to you or gives that to you. It's like that present that he gives to you is like you can just live your life with purpose. And
Right.
whenever you're living with your life with purpose, there's no mistakes, there's no failure. It's just amazing. So I truly appreciate having that connection and relationship with you. And that's what we are here about the Black Podcast, is building those relationships with people. It's not about how many people can I know, how many likes can I have, but having a relevant relationship to say, hey, Josh, this is what we're doing. How can you contribute? And you do the same for us.
Yeah, I love it. And to bridge those two, it's collaboration over competition, right? The idea of competition is great in sports because there's always a winner and there's always a loser. And I think at some point society tries to take that out and be like, everybody got
Oh,
to win.
they have definitely taken that out.
Not true. That's not true. But when it comes to competing in life, the truth is nobody runs in your lane. Nobody. We can't. It's a lane of your own. And we live in such a society that has such a great spirit of comparison. Like I look to the person to the left and I look to the person to the right, but comparison is not only the thief of joy, comparison is the thief of purpose. because it'll keep you from being who you are if you're always trying to be something else. You know that what's the first thing that an apple tree needs in order to produce an apple? The first thing an apple tree needs in order to produce an apple.
It needs a seed.
Seed.
It needs a
Good
seed.
soil.
It needs good soil.
And water.
But it needs to be an apple tree. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. And too many people are apple trees trying to produce bananas. They're apple trees trying to produce oranges. You are an apple tree. Be an apple tree, and you fill that tree with your fruit, because that's the fruit that God gave you. And so understanding who you are is so important, because I really believe, even in for believers, a lot of times I really don't know that we know who we actually are. You want to say that you are the son and you're the daughter of a king. How do you think a king is going to treat his children? There are certain manifestations that should take place in our lives because we are royalty. It's just what I believe. And I believe just for everybody, that understanding who you are, what you possess, what's inside of you. If you're an apple tree, be an apple tree. If you want to produce oranges, you produce oranges. If you want to produce bananas, if that's who you are, you're going to produce bananas. And nobody can produce them better than you, because that's what's been given to your hand. And so that is such an important piece for us in life, and understanding that that responsibility will come on us. It's up to us to make something of our lives.
Yeah.
If God says, give me fruit, then that implies that we have a seed.
Yeah.
We have this seed. And so now it's time to put it in the right environment. It's time to nurture it, water it, get it some sunlight. So now it can begin to sprout up. And the thing about a tree, once a tree grows, it provides shade for everybody. It's not just for us, it's for the world.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of, when you collaborate and build relationships, or relevant relationships with the right people, because you know what your fruit is. And so that was one of the beauty about when me and Brian decided to collaborate. It was like, she's a coach. She's the girl about athletics. She's in there. She's teaching. She knows. And then it's like him, where it's like, he's on the psychology side. He's on the social work side. So he sees a different side. And it was the beauty of coming together and saying, this is my fruit. This is what I have to give. And him say, this is what I have to give. And we say, how can we create a space, that's going to impact more people? Because you start talking about, you have athletes, you have mentality, you have athletes, you have struggles, you have athletes, you have identity, you have athletes, you have relationships, all these things. It was like, why not collaborate? Why not bring your gifts together and not be afraid to do that? A lot of times people are like, I ain't trying to tell them what I got going on. I ain't trying to, and it's like, that's not how you're supposed to live your life. You can inspire your 10 people, or you can get with somebody and bring your 10 people, and he can bring his 10 people. Now you inspire 20, but people don't want to do that, and sometimes in particular, our community, we feel like, well, this gift is for me, that ain't my problem, what they got going on, or, and so it's beautiful when you can bring 2 people or 3 people or whatever, or visions together, say, well, this is what Josh is doing. This is what his mission is about. And this is how can we collaborate? How can we impact people on the masses, and it not be, and everybody know their lane. I'm not going to try to speak on things that's your story. I'm not going to speak on Brian's story. I can only speak from mine. But when you operate with other people, like you were saying before, that all are operating and competing with them, with their inner self, it's beautiful. Because they challenge you to think higher or outside the box. And then you learn. I've learned so much through being partners with him, that it was like, wow, I never thought of that. So we have a lot of wow moments in our conversations and our meetings. And I'll call him, we'll hang up, and I'll be like, something to come up, and I'll be like, B, hey, I think we need to expand in this way. And he'd be like, yeah, Yeah. I'm gonna get on it. I'm gonna do this. So it's like it's a good vibe. Even when we put the Black podcast together, it's like I know my responsibilities in my lane, and he knows his, and mine is to go out and discover these talents and these people, and say, I'll shoot him over to him. Hey, we're gonna have Young on the show. He said, yeah. He said, and then he'll do the researching and learning more about your story. He'll come up with the title, and so it's just like it's just a good collaboration, but it's healthy, you know. And the great thing about having those relationships is that you can tell them, like, if you ever came to me and said something, I'm good with telling Brian, well, no, I'm not feeling that, because he knows it's coming from a place of love. And that's what relationships are about. When you talked about your friend who was in jail and stuff like that, it's from love. So that relationship never dies once you have a solid relationship. So it's just beautiful to see you operate in that space, and you want to continue to give back. And when you talked about, being competitive, I've been a teacher for 15 years, and they have taken away, they kept sports, but they took away the being competitiveness away. Everybody's a winner. Everybody should play. They even have ribbons now in track where it comes all the way to 15th place. I mean, 15th is spelled all the way out on the ribbon. And it's just like, what are we really telling kids about being competitive and being their best self? We're kind of setting them up for that failure. So it's important that we surround ourselves with, people that are okay with being in competition with their inner self, and not with each other. So it's a beautiful thing to see you operate in that space.
You're muted. We can't hear you. Oh no.
Is once you start getting richer and richer with the information and the knowledge, it's like my stuff cut off, his stuff cut off, your stuff cut off. Still can't hear you. Because
Yeah. Technology crazy like that, man.
no, it's when you start talking about
It's a good feeling.
abundance.
If we complaining up in here, it'll be running smooth.
Yeah, and we were talking about how people are hurting us and we can't progress and the world is against us. The computer be working perfect.
Oh,
I don't know why. What did you do last time? Did you reset it, Brian? Last time, how did he get? How did?
I don't know. I'm gonna kick you out and you jump back in. All right. Yeah,
But
man.
yeah, when you're talking about fruit and and a harvest and abundance, and it's like, okay, we about to cut this show short right now before they actually speak hope into someone's life.
Mhm. Yeah. All right, let's try again.
That's better.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
All right.
I was saying, whenever you start speaking hope and life to someone, there goes the darkness. But again, we get to set the reset button.
That's. I wanted that you were saying something that I enjoyed, and it's especially in our community, it's so sad. A lot of it is historical too, the way that we interact with each other. And knowing your history is so important. Let me say that, because when I was younger, I didn't care about history at all. I didn't see its relevance. It didn't actually. It wasn't until I moved to Europe when history came to life. I was going into these different cities and seeing the stuff I learned in school, and I'm like, this is so cool. And it wasn't until much later in life that I started to learn about our history, which is even more intriguing. But one thing was the way that we feel like we have to suppress information. Like, that's just for me. I can't tell you, and it's sad actually, because if you have a candle, I never had a candle that I lit and I went to light another candle and my candle went out. It never happened. I don't think it ever happened to anyone. That's because when you take your candle, light another candle, now both y'all's candles are lit. And if we could understand that fact alone, that I can take my light and I can help illuminate yours, And now we have two candles that are lit. And if you do it and I do it again, now it multiplies. And then it becomes exponential. But at every single time I light your candle and then I blow it out and I light another candle, I blow it out, then we just gonna be stuck with a couple candles in there.
It is gonna be dark.
It's gonna be a dark Christmas. Then it's gonna be a dark Christmas. But when you look at collaboration, if you look at the way that Jesus lived his life, what did he do? He went and got 12 and he collabed. He found people that were strong in certain areas that he needed. And he even got business people. If you look at the people that he surrounded himself with, sometimes we need some people that are experts in the areas that we're trying to go into. Those collaborations and those relationships, right? You can't, everything ain't going to be pieced together through prayer and speaking in the Holy Ghost. And not to say that those things aren't real, but there are things that we have to be good stewards of in the way that we're going to go about this life. And so even the collaborations that are brought into our life, being good stewards of those. So I agree with what you were saying about it, because to me, relationships, one of the most important things in life.
Yeah.
And you just never know what's going to come of them. I do know that God is a God of connection. That's what I know for sure.
Absolutely.
We're on this podcast today, and I'm sure we will be connected for the rest of life because of it.
Goodness, yes.
And so getting younger people, that's also one of the things, getting younger people to understand, especially athletes, you're moving through life as an athlete, and you go play college, whatever.
Can't do it by yourself.
You can't do it, and you're not supposed to do it by yourself.
Mm-mm.
Jesus didn't do it by himself. You're not supposed to do it by yourself.
Absolutely not.
So, but being able to really tap into those relationships, you're around all these people,
and not being too prideful to say that you don't know.
Exactly.
You know, if you don't know, say you don't know. You know, like it's okay that you don't have to be great at everything. Like you said, when he created a tree, and we all have different branches, you know, but one purpose, one place, and it's just so you're right when you talk about being okay with those, relationships and making sure your relationship is solid. And I used to tell my athletes that all the time. I said, or even my students, I would say, y'all ain't here talking about what teacher's stupid or what coach is stupid, but I got my first head coach job as a my first head job with track and field. My high school coach spoke on my behalf. I still had to go interview. They didn't just give it to me. But the fact that they can say, this is the girl, I know who she is and what she's about. When you don't build those relationships with people, and you tarnish your name, it's a crazy thing. But one thing, I speak at a lot of like women conferences, and I've spoken churches and stuff like that. And I would tell people, you can't expect a harvest if you haven't planted any seeds. You can't just say I'm waiting. I know people that's been waiting on the Lord for forever, their whole life. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what are you? He's waiting on you to take a step. He's waiting on you, waiting on him. He waiting on you. But we get that mixed up when we think we can just pray our way through everything and not actually have to. Faith is when you're talking about making these moves and you believe that He's going to give you the desires of your heart. And that he has a purpose and a plan for your life. That means that He's going to order all your steps. He already knows the mistakes that you're going to make before you make them. And He already has something that's already prepared that for when you do make it. And so that's why I say it's a beauty about just, if you can just live your life with purpose and live your life with being humble and living the truth. You're always going to see the harvest, whether it comes in monetary gifts or whether it comes in just people, but inspiring people and speaking life into people is priceless. Nobody can ever really pay Young to come out and speak. They can never pay you enough money for you to tell your story. They can never pay Brian enough money to tell his story or my story. But the beauty of it is the people that are going to come afterwards to say thank you. That to me is like, it just always gives me confirmation that I'm in the right place and I'm doing the right things in my life, and that's why when everybody's texting and calling about going to do something, it's like, I'd rather work on my gift I'd rather work on, I get excited about the things that I'm doing because this is my life. This is not just a career or a job or likes or being popular. It's about, I want to make sure that when people speak my name, they say, man, that girl Sherelle, man, she's legit. I don't mind going to get the letters behind my name and all these different education, but that's not who I am, but it's through my education that now I may be able to speak to more people. Now I can be able to get into schools, places that I couldn't get in before, So it's just important that you live your life with purpose and that you allow, not afraid to fail if it's considered failure, but knowing he is who he say he is and truly believe in that, because we have a lot of people that got a lot of Bible scriptures memorized, but their life has not changed. And I said, if God speaks about living an abundance life, if you're still doing the same thing you was doing last year, you're not living an abundant life. That's not the life he wants you to live. We're not supposed to be doing the same thing. If you're not thinking about progress, I see people stand up all the time. I've been doing this for 29 years. It's like, but have you progressed? Who have you inspired in these 29 years besides you just being in this same space, taking up air, so we have to be careful when we speak about religion or relationship with God, and you speak about your purpose and you speak about relationships with people, what that all means and how you put it all together. So it's important.
Yeah. When you say those things, I'm just like, oh my, it's so tough to hear. I mean, I grew up in church, and I probably grew up in similar churches as you all. And I just don't, I just think that God wants more for us. I just believe that he wants more. I actually really believe that God is disappointed, that he's not pleased. And I think he's not pleased for a number of reasons, but I'm just talking about within the body. He's not pleased because we're not good representation of who he is and in the fullness of who he is. There's something about nature that, right, that just gives off the glory of God. Birds just fly and fish just swim and the leaves just blow. But humans, we have a choice if we want to act according to the way that we were created. And the saddest part is that most of us live and die and we never give the fullness of who we are to the world. That you find the most gift, talent, and ability in the cemetery, because that's where most of it is. And that isn't the purpose for our lives. It's not that we would come here, live a life of mediocrity and no impact, and then go on to the pie in the sky. That I can't believe that. I can't get with it. I believe that if if we really understand who we are, that we don't, it's not even success for us, it's impact. How do we live a life of impact? I'm going to change the word out of my vocabulary, because that's what it is. Because if you find ways to serve people, money will follow you. There's something about becoming who you're supposed to be that attracts all of the things. You chase the giver, and everything that you want chases you. And so we have to change our mindset about the way that we're going about life, because right now everything is it's so fiat centric. It's so like, how do we get this money and chase the bag and get the bag? You want, and I was telling Brian this, you want $1,000,000. What would you do with $1,000,000? You'll waste
And
that
what are you willing
$1,000,000.
to do to get that? Some people will sell their soul to get that $1,000,000.
It's a fact. But would you give your child a car when they're 5? No, because they're not ready to handle the car. And the truth is, you look at the way that I can only talk from my own personal experiences. I had to look at the way that I was handling money and then be like, why would God bless me with all this money I'm asking for? You're wasteful, bro. You're wasteful with what you have right now. And the truth is that people don't budget, don't have a plan, don't have a business plan, don't have no type of goals, nothing but just like, yeah, I'm waiting on the Lord. The Lord is waiting on you. You talk about faith, but the Bible says that faith without works is actually dead. So do we have faith if we don't have these works attached to the faith? there's just so many things that I think we just completely skip over when we read the Bible, because we read it for so long that it's not the power of God. It's just another novel. It's just like, oh yeah, I read the story. I was talking to my mom about this the other day. If you go, because we're reading the Bible in a year, if you go through and read the stories in the Bible and you actually think about the story, not the way that I knew it when I was a kid, and so it was just like a little fairy tale. If you know the story of Jonah, it says that Jonah was in a whale for 3 days. You know how insane that is? My man was in a whale for 3 days. If someone walked up to you tomorrow and told you, I've been in a whale the last 3 days, sorry, you're going to be like, you're nuts. You know, there are certain things in the Bible that we just, because we know them from being kids, that we don't even really think about how powerful these stories actually are. And I think it's the same thing when we have commandments, when we read about the grace of God, when we read about how we have to add to our faith. We read all these things, we quote these things, and then we don't do them. What is the power in knowing the word if you're not? Don't be not hearers of the word, be doers of the word. If we're not going to be doers of the word, then what are we doing?
Absolutely. You gotta apply it. If you don't apply it, yeah, it's like preparing your whole season, going to strength and conditioning and doing all those things, and then when it comes to the championship, not showing up. It's just like, why did you do? Why are we saying these things if we don't truly believe it? Why are we doing these things if you don't really, if it's not truly a part of who you are, then why do it? But people can't be afraid to. People can't be afraid to just live their truth, because a lot of times it's society is, and in particular our community, if it's not making you $1 million, and if it's not, giving you a lot of likes. I was telling somebody the other day that I can post something on Instagram and talk about God or what he's doing in my life or something that's inspiring, and I'll get 20 likes. But I can take that same, I'm the same person. I take the same picture, but this time I'm on the beach talking about how I'm enjoying life, but I'm in a bathing suit. How many more people are more interested in that than they are hearing the truth? We are so attracted to the wrong things because of, it's like people are willing to not live their purpose in life, or not even try to discover their purpose in life, because it's not popular. It's not popular being in that space, and you may not get a lot of likes when you start talking about you got to live your life right. You can't just speak on these things, but you have to actually try to apply it. And it's okay if you don't check all the boxes. It's okay if you don't do everything like how you think you should be doing it, or people are scared to have a relationship with God because they still want to live the life that they want to live. And it's just amazing when you can get to that place to say, I'm not worrying about being accepted by people. I want to please God. I want him to say, job well done, Sherelle. I don't want to have to go to the gates and be like, please, I'm sorry, I didn't do anything in these, in all these years you had me there. I don't want to have to feel like that. But I know that God will place the right people in our lives, whether it's to collaborate or the people you're supposed to or intended to speak to. So I really appreciate you living your truth. And I know that you don't have, I don't have to say thank you for that, but it is thank you, because you could be living your truth in silence. You could be living your truth in the dark and blowing out other candles, but the fact that you live your life on continuing to light, and when it burns out, relighting it for them, because some people don't have enough strength to do it for themselves. And that's why they have people like you and I, or like Brian, that can say, hey, when your light burn, when your candle burns out, I have enough light in mine, I can light yours. You know what I'm saying? Or it's just a beautiful thing. When you can sit back and just say, like, wow, I'm living my life the way that I want to. But know that the devil does come to steal, kill, and destroy. That's his job. The same way God has a purpose and plan for your life, he also knows that he has a purpose and plan for your life. And so he's going to do whatever he needs to do to stop it, whether it's cutting my computer off or muting yours or adding static, whatever it is. he's doing his job. But it doesn't stop you from speaking. So as long as we don't take those challenges and those failures and just stop or get discouraged, but continue to to grow and to love and to pour into our families, and pour into each other, I just think it's a beautiful thing. And I'm excited about what you're doing. And I look forward to being a part of what you're doing and contributing with whatever gifts that I have, and that we have as a company, as an organization, because that's what it's all about. We work countless hours on preparing these programs because we truly believe that this is our purpose. There's a lot of things that we're good at, but impacting our community and people around us is our purpose, is my purpose in life. I go to sleep thinking about it. I wake up thinking about it. And every time I wake up and I'm driving to wherever I'm going, I say, God, I thank you. How, please make sure that today I operate in the space that you want me to operate in. And so that's the beauty of knowing what your fruit is and being able to share that with other people so that they can grow.
I Go ahead, Brian.
No, I'm just about to say, like, we could do this like until 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. I absolutely love it, man. And it's there's so much of society that doesn't want us to be having this conversation right now.
That's a
Like,
fact.
and there's too many of us that care so much of what society says we should be doing. And we get caught up in the purpose of other people because I want to be liked by that person. I want to be accepted by that person. That desire for external validation. And you mentioned earlier that intrinsic identity, that intrinsic, like really knowing who you are and what you're meant to be inside without the necessity of that external validation. And ultimately, whenever we do that enough, we will get the external love, the external passion, the external support because they see the trueness, the authenticity in who we are. And we'll attract those individuals who are meant to be attracted to us, who we were meant to impact, instead of those individuals who we're putting on a facade for to be accepted. And man, like, I just got so much respect for you for being who you are, for speaking your truth and letting it be seen that, look, you don't have to be the status quo. Why don't you create the new status quo? And I think that's just so important in today's day. So important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The thing that I do understand is that life is a process, right? And sometimes we want people to be further along in their journey than they actually are. And the truth is that my life, it took me a long time to get to this place. And I was literally talking to God earlier, like I could have been here 10 years ago. Like I was doing whatever just for 10 years, just cause I wasn't there where I needed to be, even though I had seen the power. I understood who God was and what He had done in my life to that point. But it was like that the man who looks at himself in the mirror turns around and forgets who he is. And I did that so many times. And I think when I was sitting in my apartment in December, I was just like, I'm tired of not being who I am. You know the feeling of being tired of not being who you actually are. When who you actually are, you don't feel the manifestations of who you are. That's a terrible place to be. That's a terrible place to live. It's a terrible place to live beneath your potential. It's a terrible place to live in mediocrity when you know you're great. And I just don't want it anymore. And I think when I look at society, when I look at specifically people who look like me and who look like you, I just want more for our people. I want so much more. I read I read Up from Slavery. I love Booker T. Washington. I read Up from Slavery when I was in high school, and when I say read, I mean probably the Cliff Notes. I didn't know nothing about the book because when I purchased it last year again to read, I read it and nothing rang a bell. Nothing. But it was the first line of that book that just changed my life. And he says, I was born a slave on a plantation in Franklin County, Virginia. I was born a slave on a plantation. And the first line of the book of a man who proceeded to write the rest of an entire book about his life. And the first line says that he was born a slave on a plantation in Virginia. And then he goes on to say, I don't know where or at what time, but I do know that I was born somewhere at some time. And then you go through his life. If you want to read the book about a man who understood the competition of one, he understood that I understand there's segregation. I understand that there's Jim Crow. I understand that everyone who doesn't look like me thinks that I'm inferior. I understand that I'm not allowed to be educated. I understand that I'm not allowed to vote. The circumstances surrounding my life do not look favorable. But what I understand is that I have decisions. I have a choice. I have the things that have been put inside of me, and I have a responsibility to those things. So what am I going to do? I'm going to walk for days and days and days and days to get to Hampton University because I want to be educated. And because that man walked in his purpose, because he kept making decisions to push forward in his life, he brought up an entire nation of people, to the point that people started to hear about him, and they asked him to come down to Tuskegee, and he turned Tuskegee into one of the most prominent institutions in America, not Black institutions, where they produced more self-made millionaires by 1905 than any of the top 3 Ivy League schools in America, by showing merit and by teaching people, by raising the tide of his community. And if Booker T. Washington can start his life sleeping on a dirt floor until after the Emancipation Proclamation, riding horses for miles. And he said that when he fell off the horse, because he was a child, he would have to take this grain and he had to take it to the mill. And he said when he fell off the horse, he had to stand there and wait for someone to come and put him back on the horse. And he didn't know if it was going to be someone who looked like him or someone who didn't, who was going to cut off his ears. But either way, he had to wait. And he would take that and then he would come back. And that was the beginning of a man's life who ended up turning the tide for an entire people, who would stand up before thousands and give a speech in front of people for his people and say that this is what we're going to do in this time. We understand who we are, we understand the time, and we understand that's what's inside of us and what we can give to this society. And you bear with us. The respect that I have for Booker T. Washington is unbelievable. There's more people in life, but that first sentence of that book changed my life completely. Because Absolutely. If this man can start his life as a slave on a plantation in the height of racism, in the height of Jim Crow, right after the
we don't have an excuse.
JY, you don't have an excuse. JY,
you don't have an excuse. And that, I think leaving on that note is so important, that people need to know you don't have an excuse. You have too many people out here that are willing to collaborate and have relationships with you. And so we have to make sure that shows like this, that we, not only just watch it and then log off, but that we're sharing, on our platform. And so we want to encourage people that use these videos, these shows to share with other people, because that's what it's about, is impacting people. And you never know who's in your circle that may need to hear someone else's story. It may not be for you, or you may not think it's for you, but it may be for the next person. And that's what our life is about. Who can you inspire, or who can you impact that's in your corner, but who, and who else besides you and in front of you and behind you? Because you never know, people are always watching. They may not say anything, but that doesn't mean they're not watching. And so we just appreciate you for coming on the show, and we appreciate you just living your truth and speaking your truth. And we are excited about, you haven't even touched the surface of what your life is about to be when it comes to I just think that God is going to take you, or I know that God is going to take you higher, and we're just going to be right there ready to go higher with you.
Let's go.
Hey, I'm a winner, so I'm trying to win. Okay.
I feel you on that.
I'm trying to win.
Come be a part of that community. We would love to have you. I can't wait to collaborate with you too. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation in this time, and the fact that we are able to do this through technology and just connect over the internet. And you just don't know where this is going to go. But I feel in my spirit that it's going to go somewhere powerful.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah, what's going to come out of this is going to be amazing.
Well, we're going to drop the mic on that one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being a part of the Black Podcast, and we will be in contact with you and continue this relationship with you. And so we have put all your social media where people can find you. So where can we find you? So I guess can find you. I know how to find you, but they need to know how to find you as well. So that way they can continue to watch your story and you can continue to inspire on your journey. So where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at JAYO8 _ is my Instagram. Please feel free to follow Competition of One on Instagram. We haven't started putting up anything there yet. We just have our coming soon, which we'll release in a couple weeks. I'm also on Twitter. I love Twitter. I'm there sometimes more than I am other times. But there it's Forever J.A. Young. Forever J.A. Young on Twitter is another way that you can connect with me, and always feel free to reach out. I'm big on, like I said, relationships. I'm big on genuine, authentic relationships and connections. And so to anyone who heard what we were talking about today, who has questions, who is unsure about their purpose, who's not sure about their gifting, or just wants to talk in general, please feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms. I respond to everyone. And so I will do that. And with you all, I will be connecting on an even deeper level. So I'll be making sure I get not just my my Instagram and my Twitter, but I want to send my number to you guys so we can be accountable on a more personal level. And in our emails we can exchange as well. But I appreciate you for the opportunity to come on your show, and all blessings to what you're doing, your vision. It's much needed. We need more of this in our society, and I'm grateful that I've been able to be a part of it today.
We're honored, man. We are completely honored. And you said it, like this relationship is going to go so much deeper, so much further, so much longer. The impact is going to be so profound. I see it. We have never had a guest that we had as long of a session as we just had. You are definitely a trendsetter. And it's all about the value. When you're dropping so much value, you can't cut that off. You can't stop that, because there's so many people that are listening, that are going to watch the replay, that are going to catch whenever we send it out through podcast form, that their lives are going to be transformed because of what you spoke. And if we had chopped you off an hour ago, that's one less life that we could have impacted. And we can't say it enough. Thank you for being you. I'm going to lose a few pounds. I'm going to stretch in my so when we link up, you can. I mean, I'm just going to be there for the workout. So I know you.
Hey, we can do it. I got to do something in the summer anyway. So please,
yes,
by all means.
Well, since y'all are young, y'all ain't got to worry about it as much. I got to put in more work, I'll have to run a little more.
Hey, but if you once an athlete, always an athlete.
Always. That's my problem. That's why I'm hurting now, because I don't know how to turn it off. But thank you again, and we will definitely be connecting very soon. And be blessed and get you some sleep so that you can continue to be productive tomorrow.
I'm up now.
Now you're gonna start thinking more. But again, thank you for just being you, and we will be connecting very soon. So we're gonna go ahead and exit off. We're gonna put you in the backstage real quick, and we're gonna close out really fast, and then that'll be it. Thank you.
All right, sir.
All right, we don't need to talk anymore, because I think we've already inspired probably the masses for sure, but this is just the beginning of what you guys are going to see here on the Black Podcast, and more collaboration with Mr. Young. with HSBA. And so we're just excited about that. Thank you to everyone. Please make sure the most important thing you could do right now is share these videos, share it to your platform so that everyone can know that we have people in the building that want to inspire and pour life and light into your life. So please make sure, don't take that for granted. Share the video, share the content, because again, if it didn't inspire you, well, I know it inspired you, but if it inspired you, imagine the people in your circle that it can also impact. So we be blessed, and we thank you for your support.
Yes, yes, yes. We come on every Thursday. We have a good time. We have some great guests. Sometimes it can sound lighthearted, but these are some serious matters that we speak on. The things that are being shared can really, literally change the trajectory of people's lives. So definitely go back and listen. This is dang near 2 hour episode, and it's so worth it. Put your earplugs in while you're doing dishes, while you're going for a walk, and just listen, because the value is invaluable. So off of that note, same place, same time, every Thursday. Y'all have a good one. We shall see y'all the next time. Take care. Have